I simulated 10 seasons in F1 25, but with one condition. First place is disqualified every race. So with first place gone, that means second gets the big 25 with the points going down until 11th place. This point system rewards consistency at the top of the grid, and as you will see in this video, the title winner isn't just second in the standings every season. I must also clarify what a win and a podium is. I'll be counting second place as a win with third and fourth as podiums in these graphics. I'll also show how many times each driver was disqualified once the full standings have been revealed. With all that said, let's move into the top 10. Sainz was a big winner in this system as he almost doubles Albon's points even though he didn't even get a podium. The name that sticks out though is Verstappen in 7th. This is because he won the real championship and by a long shot as well. It's just customary for a season 1 in F1 25. In 5th it's Piastri, who's a lot closer to Norris than usual as he's only in 4th place. Then in 3rd we have Russell, and in 2nd, despite putting up a decent fight, it's Tsunoda, with Charles Leclerc taking the win in season 1 with only 2 second places and a whole lot of consistency. In fact, he didn't even get disqualified once all season. Maybe he was the only one who knew. Russell also wouldn't get a DSQ, but Verstappen earned 15, so that is why he was so low despite getting 4 second places and a few more podiums. As for the constructors, Ferrari beat out McLaren, who had 6 DSQs across their team. Apart from the top 4, Alpine stand out as they got 110 points, mostly down to Gasly. And I guess what these standings show is that even though the disqualifications affect the teams at the top a lot more, it also gives more points out to the midfield, hence why each team scored and almost every driver did as well. Way to ruin it, Hadjar. Anyways, let's move to the driver moves. And yes, we have audio this time, I'm sorry about the last video. Anyways, we start at Haas in season 1 where despite getting 52 of the team's 53 points, Ocon would be dropped in favour of Jack Crawford. I swear there's always a borderline brain dead move in season 1 for any one of the midfield teams. Moving to Ferrari, Hamilton would retire, leading Sainz to take his seat back, with Lawson joining Williams and Paul Aron completing the grid at VCARB. I swear, Lawson is hard coded to join Williams in this game, and to be honest, he deserves this move after carrying VCARB in season 1. Let's move on to season 2 now. Unlike what I said last year, 3 teams wouldn't score any points this season, but as seen by 10th, 11th and 12th, it looks like a lot of those points were taken by Williams, Aston and Alpine. Stroll and Doohan were holding back the powers of Gasly and Alonso, and Lawson had a good first year in Williams. In 9th it would be Sainz in the Ferrari below Albon. Verstappen was once again 7th as he would once again win the real championship, and Piastri was 5th once again as I don't think there's a point system where he could actually shine in this game. But into the top 4, we start with Russell, who got 2 seconds and 10 podiums. 3rd would be last season's champion Charles Leclerc as he got 3 seconds, and once again our runner-up is Tsunoda as Lando Norris would take the victory in season 2. He got 8 second places, 13 podiums and won by 70 points to Tsunoda and would only be disqualified 3 times. Lando getting back to his best by using his strongest skill, consistency. This meant McLaren would take back the Constructors' title, with Ferrari falling down to 4th thanks to Sainz dragging the team down. Mercedes stay 3rd and Red Bull move up to 3rd despite having a combined 13 disqualifications across the team. So with all that said, let's move to the transfers. We start at Aston Martin where Alonso would retire after another season of carrying the whole team, being replaced by Antonelli. Norris would jump ship to Mercedes after his first title win, with Leclerc joining McLaren and Tsunoda moving to Ferrari. This meant that Sainz would rejoin Red Bull despite having a bad year for Ferrari, and he would be replaced by Mika Hakkinen. Yeah, I don't know how he crept in there, but I guess he can stay. Finally at Haas, Crawford was dropped in favour of Zach O'Sullivan. Let's move into season 3. We're back to season 1 standards at the back of the grid as all our teams have scored and Hadjar has finally climbed off the bottom of the standings. The Haas team were equally matched but not very good as Gasly continues to carry Alpine and Antonelli carries Aston. Lawson would be closer to 9th placed Albon as the Williams were a consistent and good bunch, but that leaves us with the top 4 teams. The Ferraris were close together with Hakkinen getting the upper edge on Tsunoda thanks to his 2 second places, and Leclerc was 6th with 4 seconds. Verstappen has moved up to 5th despite another 4 second places, and now it's time for the top 4. Sainz beats out his former teammate in 4th despite scoring no second places, and Russell was once again 3rd. This leaves us with Piastri and Norris to fight it out. But ultimately, Norris wouldn't be disqualified all season, leading to a 38-point lead come season's end. They had similar stat lines, but Piastri would be disqualified 2 times, and that was the difference. Mercedes got nearly 700 points, which is incredibly high and goes to show how good Norris's season was. This order is pretty standard for the rest of the grid, so let's move to the moves. After winning the real life title 3 times in a row but losing it each time to this new rule, Verstappen would call it quits, leading Leclerc to join Red Bull, Norris to return to McLaren and Tsunoda to go to Mercedes. Replacing him at Ferrari would be Antonelli, with Colapinto moving to Aston Martin. That's all the moves for Season 3, now it's time for Season 4. The points are improving, and it was a good fight between Aston Martin and Haas in the bottom 10. We're seeing a bigger gap between the top 5 and the bottom 5 teams, and this is evident by Lawson in 10th and Albon in 7th with 215 points. He would be ahead of both Tsunoda and Antonelli, but was only 7 points behind Häkkinen, who was in 6th. Leclerc was 5th for Red Bull with 4 second place finishes and was just 1 point behind 4th place Piastri. Another 4 points up the road was Sainz in 3rd, and it was a closer title fight this time around. However, it would once again be Lando Norris who took his 3rd title in 3 years on his return to McLaren. He would win this title as well as the real one and got 8 seconds along with 9 disqualifications. Russell did have a good season, but ultimately he didn't get enough seconds, although he wouldn't be disqualified all year. McLaren would get back on top in the constructors with the order below seconds staying the same, and with that, let's move to the moves. It begins with Leclerc being dropped by Red Bull with Antonelli moving there, Russell going to Ferrari and Albon joining Mercedes with Ocon returning to the sport with Williams. Doohan would be dropped after finally getting close to Gasly and was replaced by Jack Crawford. Hulkenberg would retire, leading O'Sullivan to go to Sauber and Marty to go to Haas. And finally, Stroll would be dropped in favour of Bortoleto with Nikola Zolov joining Sauber. It's time for Season 5. We've got a weird name in the bottom 10 as Norris was 11th, even behind Colapinto and just ahead of Behrman. This is because he got an insane 17 disqualifications on his way to a real life title. And so with this, it opens up the possibility of a new winner. As we move into the top 10, Williams are once again doing very well, Mercedes have fallen off and aren't that far ahead of Williams, and Häkkinen was 5th for Ferrari. Piastri would be 4th, and 3 points ahead of him was new Ferrari driver George Russell. So we have an inter-team rivalry between Antonelli and Sainz at Red Bull for the title. There would be a gap of 5 points between them, but in the end, Antonelli got 2 disqualifications and Sainz got none, therefore securing the title. This obviously meant Red Bull dominated in the constructors, but Ferrari weren't too far behind thanks to their driver lineup. Mercedes stayed 3rd and McLaren are 4th thanks to Norris getting barely any points with Williams almost catching them. But with that, let's get into the moves. After being beaten by Lawson in his return to the sport, Ocon would once again be dropped as they went back in for Albon. This meant that Bortoleto would join Mercedes, Paul Aron would go to Aston Martin, and Richard Verschoor would join VCARB. Piastri would be dropped by McLaren for Season 6, leading Antonelli to move to the Papaya outfit, Russell to join Red Bull, and Leclerc to return to Ferrari. And finally, Behrman would be dropped by Haas for Zane Maloney. Once again, Haas dropped their best driver after a really good season. It's just like Season 1 all over again. In Season 6, the order has stayed the same, and in 14th, Marty actually managed to pick up a podium for Haas, and their driver pairing was decent. Into the top 10, we have both of the Mercedes, and I'll spoil it, they weren't low because they won the drivers in reality, but just because they were shit. In fact, they were even behind Williams as they finally beat a top 4 team. Last season's champion Sainz was in 6th with no wins, and Häkkinen was 5th with just the 1 for Ferrari. Into the top 4, and we start with Antonelli, who secured 6 wins and 10 podiums, just 2 points behind his teammate Lando Norris. This leaves us with Leclerc and Russell to fight for the title. The gap would be 19 points, and it would go the way of George Russell, who took 6 wins and 15 podiums on his way to a first title. This top 4 made for an incredibly close constructors fight, which saw McLaren, Ferrari and Red Bull be separated by just 36 points, and obviously Williams have moved above Mercedes to 4th. Now it's time for the moves. After beating Lawson, Williams would choose to drop Albon, replacing him with Zach O'Sullivan, leading Doohan to join Sauber. Häkkinen would be dropped by Ferrari for Season 7, with Russell rejoining that team after his title win, and Tsunoda returning to Red Bull. Piastri would then return to the grid with Mercedes. Gasly would be dropped by Alpine, with Richard Verschoor joining that team, and Victor Martins would go to VCARB in his place. And finally, after a big drop from 1st to 6th in Season 6, Red Bull would drop Carlos Sainz in favour of free agent Ollie Behrman. Ruthless, but fair. Season 7 sees every driver scoring, as even the terrible VCARBs managed to score some points. Marty scored a good amount of points for Haas, but as we move into the top 10, we can see Maloney scoring a great amount of points for Haas despite not getting a win. In 5th, we've got Leclerc with just the 1 win, and into the top 4, it's Ollie Behrman. In 3rd, we've got Norris with 8 wins, and in 2nd, it's Russell with just 2, as Antonelli took the title by 59 points with 11 wins and 15 podiums. He dominated here despite being disqualified the most out of everyone and winning the real championship, and his efforts helped McLaren winning the constructors by over 100 points. After beating Mercedes and cracking the top 4 last year, Williams have fallen back down to 6th as even Haas got above them, mainly because of Maloney having a brilliant midfield season. But that's all there is to see, so let's move to the moves. Tsunoda would be dropped from Red Bull with Leclerc coming back to the team, Bortoleto joining Ferrari, and Hakkinen returning to the grid with Mercedes. Lawson would be dropped by Williams after a poor season that cost them 5th in the Constructors, and would be replaced by Pepe Marti, with Gasly moving to Haas in turn. Finally, Doohan would be dropped at Sauber after being beaten by Solov convincingly, leading Hadjar to join the green team and Taylor Barnard to go to VCARB. Now let's move to Season 8. Season 8 now, and everyone at the back is in formation, with VCARB last, Alpine second last, and Sauber third from the back. Williams are also in formation in 11th and 12th, and Aaron was a good 10th for Aston. Piastri grabbed the win in 9th, but he was behind the new midfield maestro Zane Maloney, who grabbed a load of points for Haas and exactly doubled his teammate's points total. I think it's fair to say that Gasly has now passed the torch on to the next great midfield driver. Bortoleto was a decent 6th for Ferrari, Antonelli dropped from champion to 5th despite getting 6 wins, and Ollie Behrman was 4th once again. Norris was 3rd once again, and Russell was 2nd again, as Charles Leclerc would take his 2nd title at Red Bull in Season 8. He only needed to grab 2 wins and was mega consistent as he wasn't disqualified once. Red Bull retake the Constructors title as Haas keep their 5th place, and the order is mostly the same. Now time for the moves. Aaron would get us started by being dropped despite beating Colapinto, and Ollie Behrman was his replacement at Aston. Jack Doohan would head to Red Bull in turn, and Antonelli and Leclerc would do a seat swap as Leclerc attempts to join every team on the grid. Russell and Piastri would also do a seat swap. Martins would be dropped by VCARB for Hadjar, who returns after 1 year away, and Crawford went to Sauber, with Ocon coming back to the sport for the 10th time with Alpine. There's not much else to say, so let's move on to the penultimate season. Nothing has really changed in the bottom 10, but one thing that does stick out to me is Marti getting a win and 3 podiums while in 11th place. Antonelli would be down in 9th for Red Bull and was actually outperformed by Doohan despite not getting a win. Maloney once again had a great midfield year, and Piastri was a nice 6th for Ferrari, but his replacement at Mercedes got 4 wins and 9 podiums. Hakkinen would actually tie with Russell, but seeing as he got 1 more win, he would take 4th place. A nice haul of points for Mercedes, who a few years ago was getting beaten by Williams. In 3rd, we have Bortoleto with a nice 8 wins, and Leclerc 5 points ahead in 2nd, which means Lando Norris claims his 4th title in the save and another 8 wins to go along with it. He beat his teammate despite getting 7 disqualifications to Leclerc's 1, and their performance helped McLaren get back on top in the Constructors. Haas continues to sit in 5th, mainly down to Maloney, and the order apart from that is pretty normal, and so it's time for the final driver moves of the video. Piastri would retire to get us going, with Leclerc going full circle and returning to Ferrari, and Maloney earning a deserved move to a top team in McLaren. Aaron would move to Haas in turn, with Hakkinen and Bortoleto doing a seat swap. Crawford would move to VCARB, with Colapinto going to Sauber, Marti moving to Aston Martin, and finally Hadjar to Williams. That's all the moves. So let's see how this final season pans out. The bottom 10 is pretty much identical to last year, so let's move to the top 10. Behrman is 9th for Aston, and in 8th it's Maloney, who finally got his first win in real life and in this point system, but still didn't place that high. He must have thought he was still driving in the Haas. Bortoleto would score identical points to the driver he swapped seats with in 6th and 7th, and Antonelli would be 5th for Red Bull. Doohan actually beat Antonelli again, but only by 6 points in 4th. In 3rd, we got a familiar name with Russell, and in 2nd, it's Norris, as Charles Leclerc won his 3rd and final title with Ferrari to close out the save. He won Season 1 with Ferrari, bounced around a few top teams, came back to Ferrari, and won Season 10. This meant he helped Ferrari take back the Constructors title, with Aston Martin reclaiming 5th position in a hard-fought battle in the midfield. So that's what happens if first place is disqualified every race. But if you want to see what happens if we reverse the points in the top 10, that video is on screen right now for you to watch.